Yeah, so as Steph said, I'll be speaking through my lived experience of what it's like living with PMDD. So I'll start off with, because not a lot of people have heard of it. A lot of people close to me will have heard a lot about it. But for people who aren't that familiar, PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It's a recognised disability under the Equality Act of 2010. And just to break it down, so the Oxford Dictionary just cites it as a severe chronic form of PMS that causes intense, often disabling, emotional and physical symptoms. It's regarded as a distinct, treatable, hormone-related mood disorder that requires professional medical interventions. So I think on a black and white level, that's what a lot of people know it to be if they're just going to look it up and do their own research. But obviously, everybody's experience is different, and there's many different sides to it. Next slide, please, Steph. So these are the symptoms that I experience both pre and post diagnosis, and that's pre-medication, post-medication. So it's a whole variety, but they're all pretty measurable. So mood swings, sudden tearfulness, waves of hopelessness, suicidal thoughts, extreme fatigue, uncontrollable cravings, brain fog, depressive moods, anxiety, restless feet, which doesn't sound that bad, but it literally keeps me up at night. And it's not just my feet being restless. It feels like there's like 1,000 fiery pins and needles going on and my feet just won't stop moving, which is a really weird side effect, but it's quite obtrusive. Feelings of being worthless, living under a dark cloud, my whole body just being in pain, like it's pain, but it's also like a massive dead weight. So things like getting out of bed sometimes when it's really, really bad, or just lifting up my arm to straighten my hair is such a chore because it's just exhausting. And it's a really weird out of body experience because it's nothing like you would ever normally experience in everyday life. So what else? Sensitive to all kinds of rejection and unjustified anger. I think outside of PMDD, I'm quite outgoing, I'm quite playful, I'm quite chatty, I'm quite confident, I'm quite funny, I like to think. And which is why for me it's so hard, because this is such a stark contrast to how I normally live my life. So it's managing those symptoms, yes, but it's also living my daily experiences and with a very different viewpoint, if that makes sense. And so I can get a lot of these symptoms all at once, or I can get a few kind of isolated on specific days. And also something that I didn't add on here, I just remembered today, sensitivity to light and sound, which normally comes a few days before any other symptom would come. So very sound especially. So if anything's, it doesn't even have to be that loud, but I'm very aware of all the sounds around me. It's very overwhelming. And if that's paired with sensitivity to light as well, that just kind of makes me want to regress into myself even more, because it could be quite overwhelming. Next slide, please, Steph. So what areas, sorry, I've got the recording transcript bit, I'm just gonna click that off. What areas of my life does PMDD affect? So it's not just the physical and mental, it's other kind of big aspects of my life. So it affects my career in terms of kind of my everyday work. Basically, it's never really always consistent, because there are going to be times of the month where I have to try harder, or I can't handle the pressure that comes with my work sometimes, so I'll have to reorganize my schedule or my calendar for days when I can give it my full attention. So it's hard to be consistent, and that then has an impact on my performance. It then has an impact on progression. So if I want to improve in certain areas and I want to really focus on being better at something, I've got to work doubly hard during those periods, because I just know that my brain just won't allow me to focus as much as it normally would. Sorry. Affects my social life. So planning events around my cycle, seeing friends or family, or even if I know I've got something big coming up, let's just say there's a gig we need to go to as a group of friends, I can commit to it, but I can't guarantee how I'm going to be feeling at that time. So that kind of is a little bit of pressure leading up to it, because I just don't know if I'm going to have to cancel, if I'm going to try really hard, or if I'm just going to have the best time, because I don't know where I'm going to be, like cycle wise. it affects family and friends and partners and the relationships I have with them, because I have to heavily rely on them understanding that this is what I live with, and rely on them giving me support and also giving me a lot of grace sometimes. And then I get guilt sometimes because I think, does that person fully understand this is why I'm kind of changing my plans, or this is why I'm being in a bit of a mood? It's not personal. And then guilt comes into it as a whole other aspect of it. And then mental health wise, for me, I'd say there's four aspects I find really hard to deal with. So the first part is quite lonely. So as much as other people can support you, and all my friends and family are amazing at supporting me, but I'm ultimately left to deal with the symptoms on my own. So that can feel quite overwhelming and quite lonely sometimes. It's painful, but and you have to kind of carry on your day-to-day life in pain sometimes, or with massive fatigue sometimes, and you just have to kind of get on with it until you can't, and then you kind of have to allow for those days. I find it really it riddles me with guilt a lot. So I feel guilty on myself that I'm not working as hard as I should be towards something. When I've got PMDD, I should be trying harder, even though in retrospect I can look back and think, well, no, you couldn't, because you weren't okay. But in that moment, you just feel like you're failing yourself all the time. Like, why aren't I going up and I know I need to do some shopping, or why aren't I working a little bit harder on this project that I'm doing at work or whatever? And then with friends and family as well, I have spells of just feeling like it's completely irrational to think of it outside of when I'm in this phase, but I'm not being a good enough friend. I'm not being supportive enough. I should have remembered this about that person. I should have made more effort to see them more. So that plays a big part on your mental health, because there's a big part of the month where you just feel like you're just not doing good enough for anyone or even yourself. So I thought that was quite important to mention. Next slide, please. When does it affect me? So I think for the majority of people, it's the luteal phase of your cycle. And that's the same for me, but also it can start a little bit at the beginning. So at the start of ovulation, and then recently it's just been getting longer sometimes. So sometimes it will be like for example, today is day 5 of my period, and it's easing off now. So, but it shouldn't really be going that long for me. That's a bit unusual. But it can be it can last for 10 days, it can last for 2. Some months it just never happens and I'm completely fine. And the pain and all the symptoms can be like put here like a 1 out of 10, or it can be like a 10 out of 10. And that doesn't have to be consistently throughout the whole period. It can just literally be a day or an afternoon. And through my own experience, there's nothing that I can do, there's nothing in my lifestyle I can change that has a visible impact on any of this. I can't control it. If I eat better for a month, I can still have the symptoms for 10 days. If I do this for a week, it doesn't correlate. So it can be erratic sometimes. Next slide, please. So this is one of the questions that Steph asked me when she asked me to do this presentation. And I was thinking a lot about it, and there's a few things that I do remember looking back again in hindsight. So probably about 10 years ago, I remember having a massive argument with one of my boyfriends, and I can't remember what it was, but it was something very small, and my reaction was insane. So I was shouting, I was crying, I was uncontrollably crying. I locked myself away in like the spare room for like 24 hours because I didn't want anyone to be near me, but I couldn't understand why I was so angry. So I was trying to justify it to myself that whatever it was terrible. But like I say, I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't that bad. And then I remember being on a bus one day going to work, and just I think it was autumn, so it wasn't light, and it was really early in the morning, and I was sitting there with my hood up because the sounds of everyone around me and the lights on the bus and the way I was feeling, I just felt so low and dark. I was like, I just want to stay on this bus with my hood up and just not be here. Like it was the most like rock bottom feeling I think I probably felt the whole time. But I didn't understand why, and I didn't correlate the two, my period coming and this. It didn't make any sense, but it was really sad. And then about 7 years ago, I remember having a conversation with one of my friends, because I was, at the time, I was really angry towards just a lot of people for no reason. I just had a lot of anger and frustration, and I couldn't stay in group chats because the slightest thing would just make me think, oh my God, just shut up. And I said to one of my friends, I said, I think there's actually something wrong with me. And she was really, really honest. And she was like, I think there is. Like, you're not being yourself. This isn't your normal behavior. So that stuck with me, obviously, because that's when I went to the doctors and started to think about what it could possibly be. Next slide, please. So the journey begins. So I had my first doctor's appointment. I didn't know what PMDD was. I had no idea this was what it was. All I knew is that I couldn't carry on with all these things happening to me and feeling like this all the time. So I explained my symptoms, the effects it was having on my life, and said I didn't understand why I was feeling that way. I kind of started to figure out it was around my period. So the doctor's advice was take a long walk, do more exercise, take a hot bath, and try not to get too stressed. So I tried them, and it didn't really do anything. And then the second time I went to the doctors, it was when I was obsessive. I would call it obsessively now. I was obsessively exercising. I wasn't really eating much, but my symptoms were getting worse. I was having suicidal thoughts really casually. When I went to my doctor and told her this, she told me to change my diet and to eat more greens and give up smoking, which obviously I was smoking more because I was more stressed at the time. So that didn't do anything, and I was sent away. And then the third appointment, I went back because it was becoming really bad. It was having an impact on my life. So my friends, my family, my boyfriend, my work. I was having intrusive thoughts all the time, like all the time. And my low days were lower than they were before. So it was, but there was no reason. I couldn't understand why it was happening. So I just assumed it's just me. There's something wrong with me, but I don't know what it is. Am I overreacting? Am I imagining it? I don't really know. And then I was advised that, yeah, if none of the previous advice I'd been given was successful, that I should go on to antidepressants for my depression. So I didn't do that because I didn't believe I had depression, and I didn't want to try that. So next slide, please. I then moved to a new area, so I saw a new doctor. And by this point, I was getting quite desperate. But then I came across, after doing lots of research, PMDD and the symptoms. So I kind of looked at this list and I thought, well, I've literally got every single one of those symptoms and more. So I went there and I said to my doctor, I think this is what I've got. Like, what do you think? And then she sent me into the waiting room to fill out a mental health tick box questionnaire that was it looked like it just been like written down and someone had photocopied it, and it had really kind of basic questions like, do you want to kill yourself? Do you think about it? Do you hate your life? Do you hate your family? Like really, really basic, just cold questions that I was sent out into this waiting room to fill out. So I went and filled it out, came back, she looked at it, she was like, oh, okay, yeah, I think that's what you've got. We'll prescribe you on an SSRI drug called serotonin. Not called serotonin, sorry, called sertraline. And that, luckily, that turned out to be amazing. So that I started off on a really low dosage and it helped massively. And then I moved again and my symptoms were getting worse again. So I went up to the highest dosage that there was for sertraline, but I was still having all these I was still having some of the really, really bad symptoms, and they were coming back. And my GP was basically like, number one, do you want to get a hysterectomy? Just take out, whatever, and maybe that will help. Or you can go on a waiting list to see a specialist. So I was like, yeah, specialist, please. So I went on a waiting list to see a specialist at St George's, and I got an appointment for 2 years later. Next slide, please. And this was madness. So when I spoke to the doctor, they said I should go on a waiting list because I explained to them all of my symptoms, but he honed in on the one symptom, which was the uncontrollable eating. So the cravings and it's not, I'm never hungry. I just need to have this food. And if I don't know that I've got certain food in my house, I panic, which is wild. So I was explaining that to him. He said I should go on a waiting list for a gastric sleeve to prevent my uncontrollable eating. He then told me to go on a list to start a nutritionist course to control my uncontrollable eating. And then he said I should stop uncontrollably eating, or I wouldn't qualify for the gastric sleeve that was to prevent my uncontrollable eating. So I was very, very confused when I left, and it took a while for it all to kind of sink in. But I had a follow-up appointment, which I didn't go to because I didn't want a gastric sleeve, and it was all just a bit too much for me at that point. Next slide, please. So this is also something that Steph's asked me to think about as well. So things that have helped in terms of the experience of care that I have received. So the first thing, which is quite a big thing, is a sympathetic ear from the 4th GP I spoke to when I went to her with my list of symptoms. She listened to me. She prescribed me something that she genuinely thought that would help me, and it did help me. So I really appreciated that. The feeling that a GP actively wanted to try and figure out what my symptoms meant, and getting a prescription that massively changed my life, because I think if I hadn't have got that medication, my life would have been a complete, I don't know what would have happened, because I couldn't continue living my life the way it was. It was very destructive. Next slide, please. Again, something Steph's asked me to think about are things I believe need to be improved in the healthcare to support better patient experiences. So from my own experience, I would say education. So the amount of people that I spoke to, amount of GPs I spoke to who didn't know what PMDD was, and kind of when I told them, they kind of gave vague recommendations based on what they thought they should be saying. But I think for medical professionals to take a personal interest in new emerging trends in women's health, new things, new conditions that are being spoken about that maybe they didn't study when they were in medical school because they're all quite new, looking at the news, gathering feedback and analysing it from their patients, looking at social media trends and having conversations with other medical practitioners that they catch up with, because a lot of medical people that I spoke to said, okay, I'm going to talk to so-and-so about this, they know more about it, and then I never hear back. So I think that would help. Knowing when to refer a patient. So this was important. So in situations where a GP has limited knowledge of what a list of symptoms could be, to refer the patient to a specialist in the first instance, I could have saved a lot of time, a lot of years of suffering, if I'd have been sent to a women's healthcare specialist. Even just didn't have to be specifically PMDD, just a women's healthcare specialist that could have actually then looked into it or spoken to somebody else and given me the advice, and then taken the time to listen to the patient. The amount of times I went in there into the doctors and said, I can't live like this anymore, or I'm having these intrusive thoughts, and I'm sent away. I mean, luckily for me, I wasn't as bad as a lot of people can be, but I mean, it's completely irresponsible and really unsafe. And then GP sensitivity. So rather than being told I should just go on an antidepressant medication for my depression, or have I thought about having a hysterectomy or a gastric sleeve, before you've even looked at all the different avenues that I could go down before taking such drastic action, I think would be a lot more responsible and a lot more effective, and it doesn't have to get to those stages. These life-changing things that you're asking people to do just by doing your research, or just by knowing what somebody's talking about, or sending them to a specialist. Next slide, please. So for me, the main thing I need from the people around me, so friends, family, work colleagues, is just an understanding, so of what I go through, but also these are things that I think are really important. So I may take longer to answer a message, which sounds like a small thing, but it can cause a lot of anxiety and guilt for me if I know that person's waiting for a message and I haven't sent it. But sometimes I can't even pick up my phone to look at it, because I can't, it's so overwhelming to deal with that. It's just something else to think about, and I can't do it sometimes. So that understanding, that I may need to remove myself from situations suddenly. So I might be out with my friends and I might be like, I'm going to go home, or I'm going to go to bed, or whatever it is. It's because I'm just so overstimulated and I can't handle it. It's just easier to remove myself. I might be reserved or uncharacteristically quiet. Like, I'm not a quiet person by nature, but if I am quiet, it's not personal. It's nothing that person's done or it's not like I'm not enjoying myself. It's because of this. I may have low energy physically and mentally. I can't contribute to conversations. I don't want to go somewhere. I might be oversensitive. That's a big one. I can be extremely oversensitive sometimes. And again, in my normal life, I let most things kind of go. I'm not particularly sensitive. I might be extremely sad. And it's understanding that you don't need to worry about me if I'm really, really feeling really low and sad. You don't need to worry. I'm okay. I'm normally not sad about anything. There's no one thing I could pinpoint to say, oh, I hope that gets better. I'm just sad, just miserable, and I need to be left in a dark room. I may not seem excited about things I'd normally be excited about. That's sad for me because I'm a very excitable person, and sometimes things happen and I'm just like, oh, that's good, because I just can't. And I may need to cancel plans. And again, that's one of the other things that I really appreciate my friends and family understanding, because again, it's about guilt. You just feel so guilty for not turning up to things and not doing things, but it's not because I don't care and because I can't be bothered. I don't have the capacity to do it. So having people around that understand that has really helped me. Next slide, please. And these are three really important things that I think helped me after being diagnosed with PMDD. So communication, I think, is the key thing for me, is explaining to people why I have been acting the way I've been acting, or why I might act the way I act. So with my friends, after I spoke to my doctor and got a diagnosis, I sent them all a group WhatsApp message that basically said, had a picture of what PMDD is and what the symptoms can be. And I said, this is what I've been diagnosed with. This might help a little bit for you to understand why I've been being the way I've been being, but I'm going to get medication and I'm going to sort it out. So I'm working on it. But just having them all know and be so supportive was really important, because I didn't want any of them to think, well, Sarah's just turned into a bit of a bitch. Let's just kind of phase her out. But I needed them to know. And then the same with my family. They all made comments about me being just not very nice sometimes, and I wasn't very nice. Like I would overreact to things and be really mean for no reason. So after I had my diagnosis, I bought this book called We Need to Talk About PMDD, and I gave it to my mum and my dad to have a look at, and I think my sister might have looked at it. And it just, without having to explain it, I thought it'd be easier just to give them a book that explained everything for them, so then they could just kind of read up and understand a little bit again why I was being the way I was being. And then work. So this was really important. Until my last line manager, I didn't really feel comfortable bringing it up with any of my other line managers, just because a lot of the time I didn't have the energy to sit down and break it down and explain it to them. But with my last manager, I needed to, because it was affecting me more. So I kind of sat him down, explained what I had, and I said to him that I was doing this kind of thing at work, and kind of starting a PMDD support network where I worked, and I was writing some blog posts for the intranet so other line managers could understand what it meant, so that people like me who didn't want to go to the line manager could kind of say, this is what I've got, this is some information to read up on. And that really helped, because I needed to let him know that sometimes if I had meetings or deadlines, I would need to change them, because sometimes I couldn't go to a meeting because I physically didn't want to look at anyone, didn't want to speak to anybody. I wasn't going to be of any use. I was miserable. So I could preempt and I could say, like, I've got a meeting tomorrow. Do you mind if we move it to Monday? Because I know I'll be okay on Monday. And luckily, he was really, really supportive. And the same with my team that I managed as well. I explained to them, because again, I would have to cancel a lot of things and reschedule them. And I needed to give them some context so that they didn't feel like I was letting them down, so that I didn't feel like I was letting them down. So we had the communication, the dialogue, and they read the blog post and everything like that, and they were really supportive as well. Next slide, please. These are some of the sites that I've found helpful. So obviously Mind is amazing for a lot of things. There's an I am PMD network. And then while I was doing my research, I found a PMDD support group in Bristol. So I've just moved to Bristol, and there's a women's group that kind of meet every month and like chat and do things. So I've joined that little group. So hopefully I'll make some friends there. So I found local support groups really helpful, and also Instagram. I've joined so many groups of just like people that support each other, that have it, so you can share experiences. It's crazy, like you can just support strangers that you don't know just because you know what they're going through, and they can do the same to you. And they share little bits of like little supportive quotes and tips that they found that help them. Or there's somebody on there that I've been speaking to, and she's going through HRT at the moment, and that's really, really working for her. There's someone on there that's going through it that it's not working for. So you get different perspectives from people as well before you go to your doctor. Next slide, please. And that's the end. And I just wanted to say, I was talking to Steph earlier just before this, and I was saying I had a doctor's appointment today actually, and it's my new doctor in Bristol that I hadn't spoken to before. And she was probably, I said to her halfway through the conversation, you're the most knowledgeable and empathetic doctor I've spoken to in this whole journey, this whole time. And she spoke to me all about the different kind of tick box exercises you have to go through before you can get to see a specialist. And I really appreciated her honesty, and she was really supportive and like, right, we'll start the ball rolling now. You have to go through like some kind of therapy, you have to like some CBT cognitive therapy, you have to go to another kind of therapist to speak about your triggers and things like that. And she was like, none of this is gonna, I don't think any of this is really gonna help you like in like dramatically, so it might help you a little bit, but what we need to do is get you to see a specialist to then get some more help. So that was really, really positive thing that happened today, to like I tell everyone to end the slides on. Thank you very much.